There is a pattern that most people feel, but almost no one truly understands. You walk away. You decide it's over. You promise yourself, this time you won't go back. You remember the pain. You remember the disappointment. You remember how it made you feel small, unseen, unimportant. And in that moment, everything feels clear. You know you deserve better. You know this isn't right. You know staying will only hurt you again. And yet, after some time passes, something shifts. The clarity fades. The pain becomes softer. The memories change. And suddenly, you find yourself thinking about them again. Not the hurt, but the moments that felt good. The connection, the familiarity, the feeling of being with them. And before you even realize it, you are back. Not because you forgot what happened, but because something inside you pulled you back. And that is the part that confuses people the most. Because logically, it doesn't make sense. Why would someone return to something that hurt them? Why would someone choose pain again and again, even when they know the outcome? This is where most people make a mistake. They think it is weakness. They think it is lack of self-respect. They think it is emotional dependency. But the truth is deeper than all of that. Because this is not just about the person you are going back to. This is about something happening inside you. Something psychological. Something conditioned. Something that has been built over time. Long before this relationship even began. Because the reason you go back is not just about them. It is about what they represent, what they trigger, what they make you feel, even if that feeling comes with pain. Because the human mind does not chase what is good for it. It chases what feels familiar, and familiarity is one of the strongest psychological forces in relationships, even stronger than logic, even stronger than awareness, because what feels familiar feels safe, even when it hurts. And this is where the cycle begins. Pain is not always rejected. Sometimes it is recognized. And when pain is recognized, it becomes predictable. And when something becomes predictable, the mind feels a strange sense of control over it. This is why people often stay in situations that they know are not good for them, because uncertainty feels more dangerous than known pain. A person who hurts you, but in a way you understand, can feel safer than a person who treats you well, but feels unfamiliar. And this is the paradox. You are not choosing pain. You are choosing familiarity. But familiarity comes wrapped in pain. Every strong connection leaves an imprint, not just in memory, but in the emotional system. The way they spoke to you, the way they looked at you, the way they made you feel in certain moments. All of that becomes stored inside you. And the brain does something very specific with these memories. It does not store them equally. It highlights the emotional peaks, the intense moments, the highs, the closeness, the connection. And over time, those moments start to dominate your perception, even if the relationship had more pain than happiness. Because intensity leaves a deeper mark than consistency. And this is why you remember the good more strongly, even when the bad was more frequent. There is a specific dynamic that creates the strongest attachment. Not constant love, not constant attention, but inconsistency, moments of closeness, followed by distance, moments of affection, followed by withdrawal, moments where you feel chosen, followed by moments where you feel ignored. And this creates something very powerful inside the brain, a loop of anticipation. You begin to chase the next good moment because you know it can happen. You have experienced it before, and this creates hope, but not stable hope, unpredictable hope. And unpredictable rewards are the most addictive because the brain keeps asking, maybe this time it will be different. Maybe this time it will last. Maybe this time they will stay. And this maybe is what keeps you connected. At some point, the relationship stops being just about connection. It becomes part of your identity. You don't just see them as someone in your life. You see them as part of your emotional world, your routine, your sense of belonging, your sense of meaning. And when you try to leave, you are not just leaving a person. You are leaving a version of yourself, a version that existed with them. And that creates resistance, because losing a person is painful, but losing a part of yourself feels even deeper. Another reason people go back is because they never truly felt complete. The relationship did not end with clarity. It ended with confusion, unanswered questions, unfinished emotions. And the mind does not like incomplete experiences, tries to return, to resolve them, to understand, to fix, to close the loop. But here is the truth. Going back rarely gives closure. It often restarts the same cycle, because the problem was never the ending. It was the pattern. There are two types of memory at play: logical memory and emotional memory. Logical memory remembers the facts, what happened, what was said, what went wrong. Emotional memory remembers the feeling, the connection, the intensity, the closeness. And when time passes, logical memory weakens. But emotional memory stays strong, because emotions are not stored like information. They are stored like experience. And experience is harder to forget. So even if you know it was not right, you still feel something pulling you back. And this is the truth most people don't realize. You are not going back to the person. You are going back to the feeling they once gave you, the version of connection that existed in moments, not consistently, but powerfully. And that feeling becomes difficult to replace, because your mind keeps comparing everything else to it, and nothing feels the same. As this pattern repeats, something begins to shift inside your mind in a way most people never recognize. What you are feeling is not just emotional attachment anymore. It slowly transforms into something deeper, something far more difficult to control. It becomes dependency, not on the person, but on the emotional experience they create within you. Because the human brain does not attach itself to people directly. It attaches itself to feelings, to emotional states, to the way someone makes you feel when they are present, and even when they are not. And when those feelings are intense, unpredictable, and emotionally charged, the brain starts treating them differently. It starts craving them, even when they come with pain. Your brain operates on a simple system: reward and withdrawal. Whenever something makes you feel good, your brain releases chemicals that reinforce that experience. It marks it as important, pushes you to seek it again. But this is where things start becoming complicated. In healthy situations, the reward is consistent. The connection feels stable. The emotional experience is predictable, safe, and grounded. But in this kind of relationship, the reward is inconsistent, comes and goes. Sometimes you feel deeply connected. Sometimes you feel distant. Sometimes you feel valued. And sometimes you feel completely ignored. And this inconsistency creates a much stronger psychological impact, because the brain does not just respond to reward. It responds even more strongly to unpredictable reward. When you don't know when the next good moment will come, your brain becomes more focused, more alert, and more emotionally invested. So the good moments feel even better because they come after the bad ones, and the bad moments feel more confusing because they interrupt something that once felt right. This emotional contrast creates a loop where pain does not push you away. It makes you wait for the next good moment. And every time you reconnect with that person, your brain experiences a surge of emotional intensity, a mix of relief, excitement, and familiarity. This combination creates a chemical response, a sense of reward, and a temporary feeling of comfort, even if it does not last. Over time, your brain begins to associate that person with relief from emotional discomfort. So whenever you feel low, empty, or disconnected, your mind automatically returns to the same source. Not because it is healthy, but because it is familiar, and because it has worked before, even if only for a brief moment. Another layer that keeps you attached is the illusion that you can change the outcome. You start believing that this time will be different, that this time things will improve, and that this time they will finally understand you better. Because you have already experienced moments where everything felt right. You have already seen a version of the relationship that worked, and your mind holds onto that version, convinces you that if it happened once, it can happen again. And this belief creates hope. But this is not grounded hope, it is emotional hope. The kind that keeps you trying even when reality continues to show you something different. The more you invest emotionally, the harder it becomes to walk away. Because leaving does not just mean ending the connection. It means accepting that everything you invested did not lead to what you expected. And that is something the mind struggles to process. So instead of letting go, it tries to recover the investment. It tries to fix the relationship to make it work and to justify why staying still makes sense. Because walking away feels like losing everything you have put into it. And the brain resists loss far more strongly than it seeks gain. At a certain point, this connection becomes more than just a relationship. It becomes part of how you see yourself. Your thoughts revolve around it. Your emotions are influenced by it. Your sense of stability depends on it. And when something becomes part of your identity, letting it go feels like losing a part of yourself. And this is why it becomes so difficult. because you are not just trying to leave a person. You are trying to separate from an experience that has shaped how you feel. And here is the part that most people misunderstand. When you try to walk away, it does not just feel like distance. It feels like withdrawal, a sudden absence of something your mind has become used to. You feel restless. You feel empty. You feel pulled back. Not because you want to go back, but because your mind is adjusting to the absence. And this discomfort often pushes people back into the same cycle, because going back removes that feeling, even if only temporarily. And this is where the illusion becomes strongest. Feels like you are choosing to go back. Feels like your decision. But in reality, it is a pattern, a loop, conditioned response, built through repeated emotional experiences. And until that pattern is understood, continues again and again and again. And this is the truth most people never see clearly. You are not weak for going back. You are responding to a system that has been wired through emotional intensity, through inconsistency, through moments that felt real but were not stable. And once the brain connects to that pattern, it does not let go easily, not because it is right, but because it is familiar. At some point, something inside you becomes very clear. You know it is not right. You see the pattern. You understand the pain. You recognize how it affects you. And still, you cannot let go. And this is where the real confusion begins. Because now, it is no longer about not knowing. It is about knowing and still going back. And that creates a deep internal conflict. A conflict between what you understand and what you feel. Your mind tells you to walk away, but your emotions pull you back. Your logic shows you the truth, but your attachment refuses to accept it. And this is where most people start blaming themselves. They think something is wrong with them. They think they are not strong enough. They think they lack control. But the truth is much deeper than that. Because what you are experiencing is not just attachment. It is something more complex. It is a trauma bond. A trauma bond is not created through constant love. It is created through cycles. Cycles of pain and relief. Cycles of distance and closeness. Cycles of hurt and connection. And these cycles create a very strong emotional tie, because your brain begins associating the person, not just with pain, but with relief from that pain. They hurt you, but they are also the one who makes you feel better. And this creates confusion, because your mind cannot separate the two. It starts seeing them as the source of both the problem and the solution, and that is what keeps you attached. When someone becomes both your discomfort and your comfort, you become dependent on them, not because they are healthy for you, but because your emotional system has been conditioned around them. You start needing them to feel okay, even though they are the reason you don't feel okay in the first place. And this creates a loop that is very hard to break, because every time you feel low, you go back to the same source, and every time you go back, the pattern strengthens. Another reason you cannot let go is because your mind is holding onto two different versions of the same person. The person who hurt you and the person who made you feel something real. And these two versions create confusion, because you are not attached only to who they are now. You are attached to who they were in certain moments. Moments where everything felt right. Moments where you felt chosen. Moments where you felt connected. And your mind keeps replaying those moments because it wants them back. It believes that version still exists. And maybe, just maybe, you can bring it back. Hope is powerful. But in this situation, it becomes a trap because you are not hoping for something new. You are hoping for something that already happened once. You are hoping that the good moments will return, that the connection will stabilize, that the person will become consistent. But hope without change becomes illusion because it keeps you invested without giving you a real outcome. Letting go is not just about leaving a person. It is about facing something deeper. It is about facing emptiness, facing silence, facing the absence of something that once felt meaningful. And that is uncomfortable, because even pain feels easier than emptiness. Pain still gives you something to feel, something to focus on, but emptiness feels like nothing, and the human mind struggles with nothing. So instead of facing that emptiness, it chooses to go back to something familiar, even if that familiarity includes pain. At some point, this relationship becomes part of how you see yourself. You start defining your emotional experience through it. Your thoughts revolve around it. Your mood depends on it. Your sense of connection is tied to it. And when you try to leave, you are not just leaving a person. You are disrupting your own emotional structure. And that creates resistance, because your mind prefers stability. Even if that stability is unhealthy, there is always one more thought, one more chance, one more attempt, one more conversation, because it feels like you are so close to fixing it, so close to understanding it, so close to making it work. And this creates the illusion that leaving now would be premature, that maybe just one more time, things will finally change. But this one more time is what keeps the cycle alive. Over time, this pattern becomes exhausting, not physically, but emotionally, because you are constantly moving between hope and disappointment, between connection and distance, between feeling close and feeling alone. And this creates fatigue, a deep emotional fatigue, where you are no longer sure what you feel, or what you want, or what is right. And in that state, clarity becomes difficult, because exhaustion clouds decision-making. And this is the truth most people struggle to accept. You are not holding on because it is right. You are holding on because something inside you is still unresolved, still attached, still searching for closure, still trying to complete something that never fully completed. And until that internal process is understood, letting go feels impossible. But there is a moment that comes before real change. A moment where something shifts inside you, not because the other person changed, but because you finally see the pattern clearly, without illusion, without hope, without emotional distortion. You see it for what it is, and that clarity is what begins breaking the cycle. There comes a moment, not loud, not dramatic, but deeply clear. A moment where something inside you stops arguing, stops hoping, stops trying to rewrite what has already shown itself many times. And in that moment, you don't feel confused anymore. You feel something else. Clarity. Not the kind of clarity that comes from advice. Not the kind that comes from someone telling you what to do, but the kind that comes from seeing the pattern without distortion, without emotional filters, without holding on to what you wish it could be. You finally see it for what it is, not what it felt like in the beginning, not what it was in its best moments, but what it consistently became. And once you see consistency, everything changes, because the mind can ignore moments, but it cannot ignore patterns. And this is where the shift begins. You stop focusing on the good moments. You stop holding on to rare emotional highs. You stop replaying the version of them that only existed temporarily, and instead, you begin to notice something deeper, the repetition, the same cycle, the same outcome, the same feeling at the end. And once that becomes clear, hope starts fading, not painfully, but naturally, because hope depends on possibility. And when you no longer see real possibility, hope loses its hold. At this stage, your emotions are still there, but they no longer control your decisions, because something stronger has taken their place. Awareness. You begin to understand your own patterns, your own triggers, your own reasons for going back. And this changes everything, because when something is unconscious, controls you, but when it becomes conscious, you can see it. And once you can see it, you can step out of it. This is where most people get it wrong. They think detachment means you stop caring, you stop feeling, you become cold. But that is not what real detachment is. Real detachment means you still feel, but you no longer act on those feelings blindly. You no longer let them control your choices. You no longer let them pull you back into the same cycle. Because now, you understand where those feelings are coming from. Not just from love, but from conditioning, from familiarity, from emotional patterns. And once you understand that, the intensity starts losing its power. Every time you chose to go back before, you were reinforcing the pattern. You were teaching your mind that this cycle is acceptable, that this connection is worth returning to. But breaking the cycle requires something different. Not effort, not force, but interruption. You stop responding the same way. You stop going back. You allow the discomfort to exist without escaping it, because the discomfort you feel when you don't go back is not proof that you need them. It is proof that your mind is adjusting to the absence of something it was used to. And if you stay through that discomfort without returning to the same pattern, something important happens. The attachment begins to weaken. This is the hardest part. Not leaving, but staying away. Not the decision, but the consistency. Because when you don't go back, you feel the emptiness more strongly. You feel the silence. You feel the absence. And your mind tries to convince you that going back will fix it. but it doesn't. It only delays it, because the emptiness is not created by their absence. It was already there, hidden under the connection, and now you are finally facing it. And facing it is what allows you to move beyond it. When you stop going back, something else begins. You start reconnecting with yourself, with your own thoughts, with your own emotional space, and slowly, your sense of stability shifts. It no longer depends on them. It no longer depends on their presence. It begins to come from within. And this is where real strength is built, not in leaving once, but in not returning again. Letting go is not a single decision. It is a process, a gradual release of expectations, of hope, of emotional dependence, until one day you notice something different. You think about them, but it doesn't feel the same. You remember the connection, but it no longer pulls you. You see the pattern clearly, and you no longer want to repeat it. And that is the moment you have truly let go. Not because you forced yourself, but because you understood it completely. And this is the truth most people never fully realize. You don't go back because you are weak. You go back because something inside you is still attached to the experience. But once you understand that experience, not just emotionally, but psychologically, its power over you begins to fade, because clarity breaks illusion. And once the illusion is gone, the cycle cannot hold you the same way. And this is the truth most people never say out loud. You don't keep going back to the person. You keep going back to the feeling they once gave you. And until you understand that, you will keep confusing attachment with connection. Because real connection does not leave you broken again and again. It does not create cycles of pain and relief. It does not make you question your own worth. So the real question is not, why do you keep going back? The real question is, what inside you still feels incomplete without them? Because once you understand that, you stop chasing the person and you start understanding yourself. And that is where everything changes. Because what you understand, you no longer repeat. And if this made you see something deeper, something you couldn't explain before, then stay aware, because awareness is where cycles end. And if you want to understand these patterns even deeper, make sure you subscribe, because what you understand, you no longer lose.